Welcome back to the marvelous misadventures of the grumpy Scotsman and the egomaniac teacher. Yep, more Doctor Who. And if I could just speak plainly, I actually really like this Doctor. Capaldi's portrayal, for me at least, is very, very relatable. He comes off as rude, insensitive, maybe even a little heartless. But that's because he doesn't pick up on social cues. He almost seems mildly autistic. But he knows when people are in trouble, you gotta help. He may not outwardly emote much, but he does emote, which I find very relatable. Also, not since 9 or 10 or even 11 has he been this close, mentally speaking, to the War Doctor, because he talks as if he's directly been through the war between the Time Lords and the Daleks, even though he's very, very far removed from it. It's like he regenerated directly from the War Doctor. And trust me, he is going to make that emotion count later in the series. Speaking of which, it seems Clara is starting to think maybe when the Doctor comes calling, stuff's really going to go sideways, because she declines a potential outing because she's going to go on a date. She's even dressed up similar to the Nostalgia Critic, which works on her. All she's missing is a nice hat. Although she doesn't really need a hat, because she's got the look. But then the TARDIS phone rings, and despite Clara's reluctance, the Doctor casually picks it up, and she and he and two others, a cyborg and a shapeshifter, end up sitting in a room holding memory worms. Yes, the memory worms are back, and it seems they've used them on themselves intentionally. They're sitting in a conference room listening to them, recorded of course, submit to a memory wipe for some greater purpose. Then a recording from someone called the Architect informs them that they're going to rob the Bank of Carabraxos, a place in the future where the richest of the rich hoard their money and treasures, while the rest of us scrape by on minimum wage. It's a really detestable place. My guess is it's similar to a mob bank, because only the most successful criminals can get rich enough to own their own planet, which is the kind of clientele Carabraxos caters to. And they quickly find out that A, intruders are incinerated, as they witness someone getting incinerated, and 2, that the head of the bank, a very evil lady, not outwardly, just you get a sense that she's evil. It seems she has access to a creature, the last of its kind, who can feed off psychic energy, namely guilt. So if you have a guilty thought in the bank, the creature comes calling, and it literally turns your brain to soup. And the sad part is, the poor sod that our group witnesses get drained, they don't even kill him. The bank, that is. They have him chained up in the bank, and even have his next of kin chained up somewhere. Quickly, our heroes make it through various obstacles thanks to strategically placed items, including 6 essentially suicide pills in the form of a molecular shredder. When activated, it basically utterly destroys you. And unfortunately, the shapeshifter and the cyborg, who use their abilities to get Clara and the Doctor as far as possible into the bank as they can, have to use those devices. And unfortunately, right at the finish line, after the final lock fails to trip, it seems that someone also prepared for this eventuality, because right when they need it, a solar storm hits. The bank goes haywire, and the final lock is tripped, allowing the Doctor and Clara into the vault, but not the innermost vault, just far enough to get the reward for the shapeshifter, a serum that'll allow her to touch people without forcing her to change into said person, which is a little unnerving for her, because how can you trust your own eyes on someone else? And the missing memories of the cyborg's loved ones, which he was forced to delete after he hacked the wrong computer. Because you know what happens to the next of kin of people who do illegal stuff around here. So the Doctor and Clara pocket that stuff and then get captured. They're brought before the evil lady, who plans to chain them up as they are, not even essentially kill them. But then the solar storm gets worse, and everyone has to be evacuated. Except, as it turns out, the guards who were assigned to take out Clara and the Doctor, or take them away. Turns out the cyborg and the shapeshifter lady are still alive and in disguise. Turns out those shredders are actually teleporters. So, the 2 accomplices get their reward and continue to help because they can. They finally manage to penetrate the innermost vault of the director of the bank, Karabraxos herself, who, as it turns out, utilizes clones to run the operation, and promptly incinerates them when they fail to live up to her standards. The old can't trust someone who's got my eyes deal. And the Doctor, upon meeting her, has an epiphany. The architect, the one who was working for some mysterious benefactor to get all this sorted up, he's a time traveler. That's why he knew about the solar storm. He was the architect the whole time, and they had to wipe their memories so the psychic creature couldn't detect them. Out of the cacophony of psychic waves it senses every day. So then he gives Miss Karabraxos his number, because in the future, when she's dying, she lives to regret what she did in the past. So her young self departs, but her old self recruits the Doctor and company. And the thing she regrets is holding that psychic creature hostage by keeping its mate chained up. And with no one to force it to do anything, since everybody had to evacuate due to the solar storm, the creature assists in freeing its mate. And that was the goal, to right a wrong. And so, the Doctor, Clara, the shapeshifter lady who can now touch people, and the fully restored cyborg drop the creature and its mate off on a beautiful but uninhabited planet where they can finally get some peace and quiet, only sensing each other's thoughts. And after a celebratory bit of Chinese food, everybody parts company as friends, and Clara goes on a date with Danny and gets more food. Although the Doctor does make a joke that the TARDIS doesn't count calories. So Clara can eat as much as she wants. But not really. The TARDIS isn't a miracle worker. But the Doctor starts to wonder if there might be some power behind what's been going on. Meanwhile, the strain of the Doctor and Clara going on adventures, and Clara and Danny dating starts to get to Clara. She has trouble explaining why she suddenly has a suntan, or why she's wet, or why she's exhausted, despite not going for a run yet. So eventually, the Doctor does something suspicious. He says, "No adventure today, I've got to go undercover." So Clara's got a free day. And who does she run into at Coal Hill School but the Doctor, posing as a caretaker who starts fiddling with various things around the school. Meanwhile, the Doctor runs into a fellow who kind of looks like how he used to look, namely the 11th Doctor. And he figures Clara's dating him, and he's a little miffed when he finds out that she's actually dating a former soldier. Calling him PE, because only a former soldier would be a PE teacher, not a math teacher. Danny and the Doctor rub each other the wrong way, because while Danny was a boots-on-the-ground grunt, the Doctor was basically a general. And they get into a few arguments. Even Danny sarcastically calls the Doctor Sir, not realizing that the pain of the War Doctor is still quite raw in the Doctor. And to top it all off, the reason the Doctor's there, there's a malfunctioning battle droid that could probably go toe-to-toe with the Daleks or Cybermen and hold its own. But rather than calling UNIT to help deal with it, the Doctor devises up a plan to send it billions of years into the future. Only when he tries to enact the plan, Danny accidentally sabotaged it by taking one of the devices the Doctor set up, not realizing what it was doing. And so, after a few explosions, no one was hurt, thankfully, except for a guard, or a police officer, I should say, earlier in the episode, after discovering the creature. The Doctor does manage to send the robot into the future, but only a couple days. So, he has to think up a new plan to figure out how to beat this thing. And so the Doctor and Danny butt heads, and Clara's trying to play mediator. And eventually, on Parent-Teacher Day, when a particularly rude young student ends up discovering the TARDIS, the Doctor, Danny, and Clara end up sort of banding together to beat the creature. The Doctor rigged up a control device, and just barely, with a little bit of help from Danny, who distracted the creature, managed to shut it down once and for all. And, just because he's that kind of a guy, when the Doctor sends the robot into the void of space, he brings the rude student along with him to show her stuff, which she likes, although she doesn't handle seeing the void of space from a police box very well, and throws up. Clean up on aisle 12. And so, Clara makes a decision. She tells Danny that she's swearing off adventures with the Doctor, and tells the Doctor that she's breaking up with Danny. Yep, she is hosed. And so, after living a double life for a while, Clara and the Doctor and the rude student travel to the moon in the tail end of the 2050s. Still within my lifetime, but a decent way into the future. And they end up landing on an old space shuttle, which crash lands on the moon. And they find out that it's an Armageddon-style mission. The moon is suddenly acting up. Gravity is shifting. The tides on the planet are going haywire. And the moon, for some reason, has enough gravity so you can't bounce around like Neil Armstrong. And what's worse, about 10 years ago, a Mexican mineral survey lost contact after all the satellites and stuff that was in Earth's orbit was destroyed. But what little information we got doesn't bode well. Not only did they not find any minerals, but they may have died screaming. So, after recommissioning an old space shuttle and gathering together the last capable astronauts on Earth because, unfortunately, space travel became a bit blasé. People stopped caring. They managed to land on the moon with the intent to destroy it. Because what do you do with a celestial body that is threatening the planet? Because the Earth might not necessarily need the moon, but if the moon breaks apart, which is what all their sensors are saying, and pieces of it start falling to the Earth, well, that's not going to be good. So they're going to blow it up. Okay, that doesn't really make sense. Maybe they're going to do some sort of Armageddon trip where they split the moon in half and have it go in different directions. I don't know. But anyway, the Doctor, Clara, the rude student, and some of the astronauts, because not all of them survive. Some of them get attacked by what look like giant spiders, but react to an anti-germ spray like germs. They go exploring and discover the truth. The moon isn't just a hunk of rock. It's an egg. There's a massive creature inside it, and it's hatching. Now, the astronaut lady who has dreamed of being in space since she was a kid, she wants to try and destroy the creature, which should stabilize the moon back to the way it was in order to save the planet. But now the debate begins. Kill the creature or risk it attacking the Earth? Because for all we know, the Earth was set up as a food source for this thing. And even if it doesn't see the Earth as a food source, bits of its shell could end up impacting the Earth with fatal consequences. And so, the Doctor leaves. Yeah, he gathers the survivors in one place, establishes partial communication with Earth, and tells them to sort it out themselves because he can't get involved this time. It's like Pompeii all over again, apparently. So Clara sends a desperate message to Earth. There's a creature inside the moon, and it could be dangerous once it hatches, but they can kill it. And if the people of Earth want the creature dead, to turn off their lights. And so, as the countdown to the birthday event reaches 0, the planet goes completely dark. Not a single person said, "Let the creature live." Only at the very last second, Clara decides to be merciful. She stops the countdown right at the end, and the Doctor returns, evacuates everyone to a beach on Earth, and they watch the egg hatch. And from it emerges something. It's kind of hard to see, but it looks like some sort of giant space bird or dragon. And the shell, it harmlessly disintegrates, leaving the planet safe. And the Doctor congratulates Clara on making the right decision. No, I was wrong. It's not like Armageddon or Pompeii. It's like the premiere episode of Star Trek Next Gen, when Picard allowed the creatures that the people of this one planet enslaved to go live in peace. And so, after laying a second egg, aka a new moon, the Spacebird peacefully departs. And the doctor is so busy congratulating Clara for making the right decision after telling the astronaut lady that this is the moment when people start seeing space as a place to explore again. And it's the dawn of a new age. And everybody goes home. Clara is a little miffed. Basically, the doctor threw her in the deep end, and she's lucky she didn't drown. He forced her to make a decision she didn't feel ready to make. And while he's happy she made it, she is furious. Because the doctor is involved with Earth affairs. He's part of our population. So he's got to make some of the decisions. And she accuses the doctor of being kind of heartless for forcing her to make such a huge decision on the fly. Because she very nearly didn't push the button. She very nearly let the creature die. And she doesn't want to have to go through that again, so she's out. One more adventure to say goodbye, and she's out. And so, the Doctor and Clara go to the Orient Express. But not the original. This one is a spaceship done up to look like the Orient Express, and a whole bunch of humanoids riding and working on it experience a bit of nostalgia for the old rig. Unfortunately, their vacation is spoiled when some sort of creature that looks like an ancient mummy appears to an old lady and kills her in 66 seconds. And so, the Doctor and Clara are thrust into a mystery. What is the mummy? Who's next on the hit list? And how does he save everyone? Unfortunately, this isn't just a goodbye trip for the Doctor. He wants to solve this mystery of a creature he actually knows once and for all. See, the mummy isn't actually a mummy, it's something else. Legends call it the foreseen or something. Basically, it's an ancient creature that kills you one by one, and you only have 66 seconds to live. So, after Clara has a brief call with Danny, who informs her that hatred is an emotion wasted on people you don't like. So, this whole breaking up with the Doctor thing, it doesn't fit her character. Anyway, she goes to console the granddaughter of the woman who died, a woman named Maisie, the granddaughter that is. And the Doctor makes friends with an engineer who seems to be smarter than he looks. So, this hodgepodge team of the Doctor, Clara, Maisie, the engineer, and the conductor, who used to be a soldier, who's suffering from PTSD, that's why he took this new job, try to suss out what's going on, because they all quickly get backed into a corner. It seems someone knows about this mummy creature and wants it studied. Wants whatever is inside it taken out and presented to them so they can use it for monetary gain. Oh boy, this again. It even threatens people, kills the kitchen staff, spaces them, and reconfigures the train car they've all been trapped in into a lab so they could study the creature as it kills people, including the poor conductor who comes to terms with what happened. Turns out the mummy goes after the weakest individuals. The old lady, who is over 100, a couple of staff members who were surgically repaired after some severe injuries, and the conductor who was suffering from PTSD, because the mummy also senses psychological trauma. And so its next target is Maisie, who is still freaking out over what happened to her grandma, and further freaking out over the fact that she was glad it happened because her grandma was kind of a B-word. To her, at least. And so, the doctor, thinking quick, once the mummy appears to Maisie, scans her brain and then puts all her psychic trauma or whatnot into his brain so he can see the mummy and maybe figure out a way to stop it. And yes, he does say, "Are you my mummy?" again. That joke's never gonna die. Goodness forbid they go to Egypt. They'll just be everyone saying, "Are you my mummy?" over and over again. That'll be an episode to watch. Anyway, the doctor notices something. The mummy's got symbols written on some inner rags of its wrapping, and they look identical to an artifact which draws the creature in that's been on the wall of that train car the whole time. And he realizes something. Who would kill for a scrap of cloth? A soldier would kill to protect a flag. And the doctor realizes that this creature isn't an ancient mummy, but rather a soldier, kept going by technology that should have been shut down a long time ago. And it drains energy from people to keep itself going. So it's a mummy and a vampire. A mampire. Trademark. And he realizes that the ancient legend about finding the right word to stop the creature are true. The words, "I surrender," stop the creature and cause it to finally rest. And this whole time, this benefactor, Gus, who's been speaking through the computer, he wanted that life-saving technology, even though the old lady had technology that's been helping keeping her alive well past age 100. Some people just can't be happy with the technology or time they have. And what's worse, Gus never said he was going to let everyone live. So he plans to just kill everyone and take the technology for himself. We never find out who Gus is, though, because the doctor manages to activate the device's teleporter, which is how the mummy can keep coming at you despite you running. And Gus tries to kill everyone anyway by blowing up the train. Luckily, the Doctor was able to use the TARDIS, which he now had access to because he was briefly cut off from it, to get everyone to safety. And so the device was hopefully destroyed. Gus denied his technology. And after a bit of a pep talk between Clara and the Doctor, she realizing she didn't want to stop traveling, but maybe not have to endure what she endured on the moon, they patch things up and go on their next adventure. Unfortunately, things go awry from the start. Rather than London, where I believe Clara wanted to end up, they end up in Bristol. And what's worse, something is shrinking the TARDIS. And it becomes model size, the ultimate collectible. And what's worse, people are disappearing, and this weird graffiti is starting to show up all over the place. And when the Doctor and Clara are forced to separate, because the Doctor is trapped inside the TARDIS before while it shrinks. Only on the outside, though. The inside is fine. Clara has to take up the role of Doctor with the psychic paper and the sonic screwdriver in order to figure out what's causing a drain of the TARDIS's systems. So she meets a guy named Riggsy, a graffiti artist who got in trouble for his graffiti, and a really mean rat-like dude who looks down his nose at people like Riggsy, calling the graffiti filth, even though it's actually really well done. He could paint murals all over the city, but this jerk, who I wouldn't shed a tear for if he got trapped in a room full of Daleks, forces Riggsy to paint over his work. Quickly, Riggsy proves himself to be useful when they explore one of the victims' houses and find things in the walls that absorb people. One poor policewoman gets sucked into a carpet, and her nervous system is stretched out and spread across one of the walls. And Clara and Riggsy manage to barely escape, only to be confronted by paintings of the victims so far coming to life and absorbing some of the other community service inmates, which gives the creatures, whatever they are, a third dimension, because apparently they're from Flatland. So the Doctor tries to communicate with them, figuring out how to talk to them with basic numbers, because even in Flatland they have math. But eventually the survivors are driven into one of the underground tunnels, thankfully not coming across any Yeti, but hopefully carrying the spirit of the Brigadier with them for strength. Eventually, Clara loses the TARDIS from her handbag when the rat-faced jerk tries to grab it to see if maybe it has something to do with all this. And the Doctor nearly gets run over by a train. So he's forced to turn the TARDIS into siege mode, which makes it look like a Lament configuration, only blue, or perhaps a really, really small Pandorica. Unfortunately, Clara is now cut off from the Doctor because it's been sealed. And without power, the Doctor quickly uses up the environmentals. It's getting cold, it's getting hard to breathe. And Riggsy, the rat guy, and Clara are the only ones left. Everyone else got absorbed. And the creatures now have functioning bodies, wearing the victims of their escapades like disguises. So, once they reach an old office that's been abandoned, Clara happens upon an idea. Now that the creatures have the third dimension, they can restore things that they've flattened. So she has Riggsy draw up a perfect looking door for them to reinflate. Only instead of them pouring their power into the door, it goes through a wall right into the TARDIS, which successfully brings it back, allowing the Doctor to talk to the creatures one final time, saying he tried to be nice, he tried to talk to him, and he realizes that they knew what he was saying, they just didn't care that they were hurting people. So he declares that this plane of existence is under his protection, and he declares them monsters, he declares that he stops monsters, and he names them the Boneless. And with classic Dr. Flair, he sends them back to their dimension, possibly destroying them in the process, and the day is saved. Unfortunately, the rat-faced guy has not improved his demeanor. Oh yes, he thanks the Doctor and Clara for saving him, but he doesn't care that people died. He compares it to a forest fire, letting the underbrush get destroyed for the sake of the great trees. This jerk would make a perfect Dalek. In fact, I think the Doctor should have scanned him to see if he was a Dalek in a human suit. He's actually played by this one actor who goes on to play a very sympathetic character in the Andor Star Wars series. So that tells you the range of this actor. But anyway, after congratulating Clara on being able to play the Doctor very well, once again the Doctor wonders what's going on. And why was Clara the one who gets paired up with him? And we meet the mysterious Missy again. Briefly, she showed up while the guard who was killed by that battle robot is getting processed by Missy's apparent assistant in the hereafter. And later we see her musing over the fact that she's the one who paired her with the Doctor. And she gives a sinister chuckle, which seems oddly familiar. I feel like we should know her, but we don't know quite yet. And so that brings us to the end of this segment of Capaldi's Doctor Who reviews. When next we meet, we get closer to solving the mystery of the mysterious woman. And Clara faces the consequences of some of her actions. Until then, this is Mr. J signing out and reminding you, not everyone deserves to survive a hostile encounter with the Doctor's enemies, but that doesn't give you the right to decide who lives and who dies. You can't pick and choose. You just have to save who you can. And also, the Doctor still lies. The biggest lie of all, that he's heartless.